Hi everyone, my name is Lacey Gillum and this is my screen capture assignment for EDF 204. Today I'm going to walk you through my narrative writing Nearpod assignment. Okay, the first slide that we come to is a pre-quiz to see if the students have ever heard of what a narrative is. And it's interactive, so they can click yes, no. And then for my view, it will have a button over here that you can click to go to the next slide. And on the next slide, it is my actual PowerPoint that I have uploaded to the Nearpod website. So my PowerPoint is called Narrative Writing. It's an introduction. It goes along with the Kentucky Common Core Standard for grades 9 through 10. Writing standard, it's number 3. And the standard states, write narratives to develop real or imagined experiences or events using effective technique, well-chosen details, and well-structured event sequences. So then right here to switch through the PowerPoints is where you will click. Okay, my first slide, what is narrative writing? Narrative, a story or account of events, experiences, or the like, whether true or fictitious. The event must have a clear sequence. Details in the story are elaborate. This is a great way to get to know yourself or your author better. Ultimately, there should be a clear moment of realization. Okay, so here is the assignment. Tell a story about a moment that means a lot to you. It'll make it easier for you to tell the story in an interesting way. The moment in time should be one where you or the character had an epiphany. The definition of epiphany is an experience of sudden and striking realization. The assignment should be 1.5 to 2 pages, 12-point font, standard Times New Roman is fine. It also must include a rising action, climax, falling action, and the ultimate epiphany, which will be your resolution. I have assigned the trash draft for Wednesday, as if I had assigned the original assignment on Monday, so they have 2 days to complete that. Trash draft will really consist of just their main ideas, and then down the next step says bring brainstorming sheets, which I have included. I'd like for them to bring those in and have them filled out so we have a clear understanding of what they need to do. So the rough draft will be due on Friday, where they'll have another peer review and use the class time to continue working. They can also bring their personal computers or whatever they're working on, whether it's their tablets, etc. They can go to the computer lab to work on this. That way they don't have to spend a lot of time outside of class if they're not really understanding this. Also, this gives them time to work on another standard, which is peer reviewing and the process of editing. The final draft will be due 1 week from the assigned date. Okay, so for brainstorming, if they haven't heard of it, it is think of an event that stands out. This is just an idea for them to help brainstorm for this assignment. Think of an event that stands out. It is best to choose events that you remember clearly. Why did you choose this event? What makes it memorable? And what did you or the character learn? This is where the epiphany happens. Think about who, what, when, where, and how. These will give you really good ideas to look back on so you can fill in the blanks. Okay, so here is how we are going to be applying our brainstorming knowledge. So use the e-handouts on the next slides to fill in important details of the event of your choice. Keep these handouts to reference in cases of writer's block. Okay, here's one that they can fill out, print out, however they want to do. They can use Nearpod. It has a really cool feature where you can actually fill in the blanks. But for this particular slide, it's not interactive. They'll start in the middle, the important event, and then it stems outwards. So what happened after? How did you feel about the event? How did it change your life? You've got first, next, After that, there's many different brainstorming worksheets out there. This is one that I just personally like for myself. This is how I work. But it's important to remember that everybody brainstorms differently. So it's really up to you, but I would just like for them to bring in one of this kind. Okay, the next one I would like for them to use directly. It has exposition, rise in action, climax, falling action, and resolution. This is called a plot diagram or a Freytag pyramid. So, in case you've never heard, this is your first time seeing one of these pyramids, the exposition is including the setting, characters, background. This is an introductory to what we're going to be talking about. But since this is a story, you wouldn't really say, today I'm going to be speaking about X. You bring it in with, it was a hot sunny day, I'm outside with my friends. You just bring us in, the reader, to the setting. This is where you include, as the standard states, well-chosen details. So these are the details that the reader is going to feel like they're in your story. So the rising action is the series of events building towards the climax. So maybe it was a point in time where you felt peer pressured. So the rising action would be your friends are telling you, hey, let's go skinny dipping in the neighbor's pool. And you're kind of struggling with that. You're saying, oh, I don't really know if that's a good idea, whether in your head or whether out loud. Or maybe when your friends is struggling with that and you were the one peer pressuring them. It's fine. This is just a narrative story. We can make it interesting. So it's the series of events building towards the climax. Now the climax, it's the tension or action, and it's where it reaches the highest point. So this would probably be where you went skinny dipping, or where you chose to blow off your friends and go call the neighbor and say, hey, they're trespassing, this is what they're doing, I don't want your grandma to see my friends naked. Whatever. It can be funny, it can be however you want it to be. This is your story. So the falling action is what happens afterwards. And that's all I can explain it to you. We can go in detail if you're having problems with that. It's just, so what happens afterwards? After they break in and go skinny dip, and then what do? They run away. You know, you're excited. You are like, I'm glad I joined them, or you feel really horrible about it. Maybe you got caught. Whatever. And then the resolution. So in this story, the resolution is what you learned. This is your epiphany. The conflict has been solved, but the resolution isn't always positive because we can be left hanging, which is what happens before a to be continued screen on a movie. For this particular assignment, I would like a resolution, just because it is a narrative, and the whole purpose of the narrative is to learn something. We want to learn something from this story. Whether it's a made-up and your character comes to realization that they learned something, that's the ultimate realization, is you learned something. But just remember, in other purposes of writing, creative writing, sometimes it's okay if you don't have a positive resolution. You can have to be continued to write next. Okay, so this leads us to our next slide in the PowerPoint. Okay, so here's some things to remember. Now, I found these tips on the roanstate.edu. It's a college website, and it's tips to write a great narrative. Okay, so they say get right to the action. Avoid long introductions and lengthy descriptions, especially at the beginning of your narrative. So yes, I know earlier I said to have a lot of description, but also we don't want, I know everybody's seen that picture floating around Facebook, very small, young, early peas. Like, we don't need that many description words. Like, you need to get your audience interested and have description, but you also don't want them to be like, okay, let's get to the point. Which brings us to our next tip, which is make sure your story has a point. Describe what you learned from this experience. Use all 5 of your senses to describe the setting, characters, and the plot of your story. Don't be afraid to tell the story in your own voice. Nobody wants to read a story that sounds like a textbook. Now, when remembering this tip, also remember to use the correct tenses. If you have problems with that, you can ask me. You know, if it's present, if it's past. I mean, it should be past, but if you want to tell it in a present sense, like you're right there, and you want to get the reader in the the story and feel like they're there with you, that's completely fine. But let's remember to use the right tense in the right tense situation. The next slide, let's review quiz time. So to take the quiz, we're going to hit next on the Nearpod. Okay, what is a narrative? This is my quiz to make sure you're following along. Make sure that you're understanding. If you don't understand, it's fine. If you get the quiz wrong, it's okay. It's just for me to keep track of how you're doing in class. So we're not going to answer the right question. And then the next one's define epiphany. This may sound silly, but for the longest time I would hear people say, I had an epiphany, but I really didn't understand what an epiphany was. It means different things to different people, like the moment that I'm going to tell you the answer, the moment that you realized X, but it's always the moment that you realized, or the moment you came to that realization that something was better for you, something you shouldn't be doing, or, oh, I had an epiphany of what I should be doing. It's always a moment of realization. Okay, so how many pages are required for this assignment? This is always a common question in every class I've been in, so I thought it would be helpful to point out to you to remember and look back on. If you don't need to, that's fine, but sometimes people forget, like, how many font is this supposed to be? How many pages? How long do you want it to be? What does it include? Look back and you will see what it needs to include. That's where your handouts come. Okay, and then when is the final copy due? That's another thing that needs to be remembered. So then we come to slide 4, which is the last slide. And this is another interactive slide, and it is not showing up. So pretty much I had stated above that is that it is, oh, here we go. It's a brainstorming process. Here's another interactive slide that you don't have to print out, but it would be nice if you went ahead and filled it in. It says, fill in the timeline below with memorable events from birth to present. If you choose to create your own, you can use the timeline to jot down what you would think of as a life-changing event. So, yes, this can be fictional. That's completely fine, but I would rather not know that it's fictional. I want to read it, and I want the readers to know, or to think that they know it's a real event. We want it that convincing. So right here, you can just say, from birth, you can take this really cool feature and write down first bike riding, like first time I learned how I learned to ride a bike. There's different things down here. There's the eraser. You can insert a picture. Right here we can write text, if I can get it to work. Anyway, so the reason I uploaded this to Nearpod is because it's a really cool interactive document to keep the students focused. I've also put this on my live binder so you can go back and you can look through it. I hope that you have enjoyed seeing this tutorial and be ready to start your narrative.